Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, here's what we got in store for you tonight. We're going to make a fast stop out in Nosara, Costa Rica to get the latest word on the marlin bite because, golly, boy, there's a lot of Florida guys go over there. I know I do. I count the days till my next trip. And then we're going to hit the state of Florida hard. We're going to start up in the northeast corner with Captain David Voorhees, get the report from each inlet. What's the fishing like? What's the water condition like? Exactly what's going on. And I've got an extra question for the boys tonight as we go through the Keys, come up the West Coast and out the Panhandle. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, you want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By the Castaway Hat Company, that's the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors, right stuff, low price, every day. You know, boats have changed a lot. Motors have sure changed a lot in the last several years. I want to know how comfortable guys would be in a 23-foot single-engine boat, how far offshore they'd be comfortable. What would they consider their limit? Well, let me tell you, take it from somebody that way back in 1975 took a day and a half till we got rescued by a freighter. I might be a little bit closer to shore than a lot of boats would be, but everything's better. Golly, I fish 70 miles offshore now, and I see little single-engine boats all the time, and I'm not sure that's a good idea. Things can change pretty quick out there, but I want to ask the experts, so we'll find out just how that goes. So let's get it rolling this evening with a quick stop in Nosara, Costa Rica to check in with Craig Sutton. Now, let's check in with the head man, the mayor of Costa Rica himself. If there's a fish over there, he knows where it is, Mr. Craig Sutton. Craigie, how we doing?
I'm good, Captain Ricky. Real good, brother. We got some rain last week in Costa Rica, which I think I told you last week. We got rain the week before.
Right.
And I've been down there for 26 years. And our general manager, Javier, is 45 years old. They've never seen it rain in January. I've certainly never seen it, but it's keeping the bite really, really good.
I'll be darned. And you attribute that to the rain, huh?
I think normally this time of year we kind of have to go a little further offshore to get the cooler, more productive water. It's kind of a challenge finding the perfect water temperature and current. But it's kind of keeping them spread out where they're not on one specific edge. So and they're nice fish. I mean, no super monsters, but a bunch of them in the 30s and upper 30s. And it looked like a couple of them last week might have been 40s, but marlin mixed in with them, sailfish. And we got a handful of yellowfin. I think the biggest one was probably 40-ish last week, which is a little bigger than what we've been catching. But,
Craig,
good fishing.
As many years as we've been doing this thing, I don't remember a better mahi year than what you're having.
I don't either. I mean, I know it was the year we put the Wonder in the water. That November was really good, but it tapered off, early January that year. But then again, also we weren't running the number of trips we're running now, and I think a lot of it because we're kind of locating the edge, the productive edges, so they all share the information in our boats. And it may be that, but all I know is the clients are super happy. And
sure,
I'm trying to eke away and get down there. I haven't been down there in 5 weeks, so it's time for me to get down there.
My goodness. Hey, let me ask you a quick question before you go.
Yes, sir.
And I know what we all did when we were young, so let's take that off the table. If you right now had a 23-foot boat with a single engine, what would your range be?
Well, Well, I'm glad you excluded when we were young.
Yeah, I know. I know. We all did dumb things.
I used to take my 18-foot McKee craft.
Stop it.
To the 30 miles to D.O.A. in the fall when it was stacking up 3 to 5, and never thought a thing about it. But so were other guys, Robbie Bishop and Mike Gooder. They'd be out there right alongside me, and they're 21. So I don't, how old will I be at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying, now or earlier?
Right. Knowing what you know now. Tomorrow you have to downsize to a 23-foot single-engine boat. What would your range be?
I'd fish the ledge out of here.
Would you? Man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd fish the 70 miles. I wouldn't. I mean, the outboards now, they're so dependable. The boats are, they're solid, and they're you're not going to split a stringer on one of them if you get in some rough seas.
Well,
and I would fish the ledge.
Now let's not forget, you did lose one engine last year on a trip, or 2 years ago.
Me?
Yeah.
I ain't never lost no engine not on the fish tastic, not my Panga.
I thought you lost one a couple years ago. Mike Manier had to fix it for you. I don't remember what it was, but
I had coming in. I had a motor stop. I mean, I was running a little wide open right there before the ramp, and one motor shut down on me, and but it cranked right back up, and it ended up being a hose clamp that come loose.
I didn't remember that, but I didn't remember that.
Yeah. No, I got Yamahas, Ricky.
I know, I do too. You ain't telling me nothing.
I got 2,400 hours on them, and according to comparing to Costa Rica, we got the set on the Wonder in Costa Rica is 6,483 hours.
Isn't that something?
And we can't get motors until March now.
I know.
Late March. And but you know what? When you get on the boat and you listen to them, they just no piston noise, no valve train noise, just amazing motors.
Yeah, they are. Today's technology is just so much better. Cap, as always, we appreciate it. You'd be going to the ledge by yourself. I don't think I'd be joining you if I had a single engine 23. Remember, I rescued one last year that really, if they hadn't figured it out, they were in a lot of trouble. So, there's you got to be careful. But anyway, Cap, we appreciate it. We'll talk with you in a week if that's okay.
Sounds good, Ricky. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Craig. Now it's time to hit the northeast corner of Florida. That's where one Captain David Voorhees has got everything under control. Cap, how we doing?
Well, I don't know about under control, but I'm here.
Well, you're not letting any fish slip through without getting caught, are you?
Oh, no. and man, we're talking about this last week. We've been talking about this roller coaster we're on.
Uh-huh.
Well, guess what the temperature was today?
It's probably back up around 64, maybe?
No, I'm not talking water temperature. I'm just talking temperature. It was like in the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant water temp. Yeah. I know
that will bring the water temperature up. It's going to bring the water temperature up. There was still some really good reports of guys seeing on low tide schools of reds north of the St. Johns River.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and some nice schools, some big fish and good numbers too. So it was good to see that. Still haven't heard a lot on the trout scene. I mean, it seems to be hit and miss, just not a great trout year. I think I'm just going to just say this, just wasn't really a good trout season for us. But the flounder, I think, more than made up for the lack of trout. Everybody I've talked to seems to be finding some good flounder, not in any numbers right now.
Sure.
I think right now they're probably all stacked up out by the jetties and places like that. But the inshore fishermen have really done good. The sheephead's sort of picking up, with this warming trend. They'll see a better bite on them also. But, Rick, I wanted to talk about a couple of things, if I can, mainly the types of creeks that I like to target. And, I fished up and down the intercoastal, all the way from St. Augustine up to Fernandina, and mainly like to fish those feeder creeks that pour into the intercoastal waterway in the St. Johns River. Now, not all creeks are created equal. And this time of year, I'm looking for certain creeks. I like the bigger creeks this time of year, and I like the creeks that have some deep, deep holes in it. And what do I mean by deep? I'm talking holes deeper than 10 feet deep. I'm talking 12 to 15. Even some of the creeks I like to fish have 20-foot holes in them, and I love those. But there are some creeks that you'll find along the intercoastal that really don't get that deep. They probably don't get no more than 5 foot deep. Those I sort of stay away from this time of year until you get these sunny warming trends, and then you will find those reds moving into those creeks. But look for the creeks with the deep holes, the bigger creeks, and you're going to find those good numbers. And push as far back as you can on these high tides to find some of these fish. And then slowly work your way out to the mouth of the creek, fishing every bit of, just like you would bass fishing, hitting every bend, every corner, every little nook, drop off, every ledge you can find. Fish it just like you fish for bass, and you're going to find some good numbers of red.
Yeah, David, you and I talked about that on the radio show, and generally speaking, for the guys that don't have a bottom machine on their boat, generally speaking, those holes are in the outside of a curve, aren't they?
They're going to be on the outside of the bend. And usually the first, second, and third bend in the creek are going to be your 3 deepest holes, and not necessarily in any order. Sometimes it could be the first bend, sometimes it's the second, and sometimes it's the third that's going to be the deepest. But not having a depth finder, to me, going out fishing without a depth finder is basically, trying to compare it to going hunting without having camouflage on or something. It just doesn't make sense to me.
As my buddy George Labonte would say, it's kind of like the difference between shooting a deer and throwing a bullet at it.
Yeah. It don't make sense to me. The depth finders, everybody says, well, you use that to find fish. No, I'm using that depth finder to learn what this bottom looks like. And that is so important, because when I go into an area or go onto a flat or go into a creek, I'm looking at it in the way that you would remove all the water and just see the bottom structure.
Sure.
And that's the way you should approach any area that you fish. You should learn it to the point where it's almost like you've got x-ray vision and you can see what the bottom is holding, whether it be logs, stumps, rocks, points, deep drop-off, sharp drop-off. So you really, that's where the depth finder is going to come in and help you out. And if you don't have one, I suggest go ahead and get one. It's going to definitely improve your fishing ability.
No doubt about it. David, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here, Ricky.
All right, Captain David Voorhees. The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing just hung it up. No, it wasn't any of our podcasters. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway. I just don't want to do it anymore, he's credited with saying. The tackle has become so sophisticated, the fish just don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking him through the aisles of Strike Zone Fishing and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighs less than his bait did and could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? Now, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on today, and sometimes we still get beat. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd still rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in Strike Zone Fishing 68 years later. Our thanks to David Voorhees for a great Northeast report. Now, let's swing on down to the Canaveral area and check in the East Central Coast with one Captain Jimmy Ross. Jim, how are you?
Doing fantastic this week, Rick.
I'm glad to hear that. You were under the weather, seemed like forever. I'm glad to hear you sounding so chipper.
Yeah, that little cold got a hold of me about 2 weeks ago, and I tell you what, I hadn't been sick in 3 years, and knock on wood, hanging on my head right now, by the way. But man, once it got a hold of me, it got a hold of me. It's just one of those wintertime flus running around, but. Not much fun. I don't recommend it, that's for sure.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks. Tell me about your fishing.
Well, the fishing has been really good. The last 4 or 5 days, the guys have been getting good numbers of black drum. around the bridges, around the Hollover Canal, and even out on the flats of the Mesquite Lagoon and the Indian River up around the Titusville area. A lot of those fish are anywhere from about 10 to about 25 pounds. Every once in a while, you'll run into one that's pushing almost 50. So there's some really good sized there right now. Also, talked with Captain Mike Mann the other day, and he was getting a really good trout bite on paddle tails. He had been fishing anywhere from about George's Bar north to about Slippery Creek. And he said anywhere where you had mullet packed up against those sunlit, southern exposed banks,
Right.
that's where the trout were in there, and they were feeding real heavily. He said that bite has kind of slowed a little bit, but there's still decent enough numbers that it's worth your time to, spend a little time doing that if you're getting out in that particular part of the waterway. Captain Mark Gibson gave me a great report as well. He had 17 snook in the Edgewater area fishing little tiny swim baits today, little storm style, those little minnow imitations,
How
the little
about
tiny
that?
ones. And I said, this is a guy. He's in a 22-foot center console with a T-top. It's not like he's in a flats boat. But he said the docks, the mangrove edges, the deeper edges in particular, in the backwaters around Edgewater and New Smyrna have been holding a lot of small snook right now, up to about 24 inches.
Well, the great news about that to me, Jimmy, is the fact that now we know that those cold snaps we had, and one of them in particular was very severe, did not harm those fish.
Yeah. Well, we did have a lot of dead fish, but they were the ones that were in the shallows. Mike Mann actually reported about 90 snook that he found on a flat in the Mesquite Lagoon that were dead, that were, I guess they had pushed their way there trying to find some warm water. Now, this is a couple of weeks ago, trying to find some warm water and get some sunlight. But the water temperature just got to the point where it was a little too low for them. But yes, Rick, you're right. There are plenty of other areas where the snook did make it, and so that's a positive. We got snook at Canaveral the last couple of trips I've been out there. And the offshore bite has been really strong for lane snapper. We've been getting some lane snapper, up into the 20-inch range.
Mm-hmm.
Really snapper offshore right now. So, this is it's a good week to get out and do some fishing.
It's a funny thing, Jim. I ran over a wreck off of Stuart last year, just three, maybe 4 miles off the beach, and I saw a little stack on. I was dying for bait, and I was hoping it was runners. And I sent down a sabiki, and my mate came up with a 3-pound lane snapper and 2 broken off hooks.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, we're out of here because there's no bait, but we will be back here. You can count on that. And when a certain set of my grandsons that loved to bottom fish came, I went and caught myself a herd of minnows. And, buddy, I'm going to tell you, if you get on the right spot that hadn't been hit, our lane snapper population the last couple of years has been dynamite.
It has been good. It has been good.
Hey, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you run a Skeeter, right?
Yes.
Okay, what size?
I run the 240.
240. All right. So you're single power.
Yes.
What's your outside range?
On my boat, since it's a bay style boat, it's a great riding bay boat. As most of the boats these days are pretty darn good riding boats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Yamaha. I refuse to run anything but a Yamaha.
Yep.
The reliability is their forte, and I do not have a problem with these motors. I run that boat out to the 30-mile mark on a regular basis. Now, here's the caveat to that. It's got to be a 1 to 2 foot day. There's got to be no wind forecasted any time during the day. Maybe late in the afternoon we got a sea breeze picking up, but nothing out of the ordinary. That's
right. No front coming through at 4 o'clock, huh?
Yeah. I've got my VHF radio. I've got my personal locator beacon on board. I don't have an EPIR, but I do have a PLB on the boat, and I've got, obviously my cell phone, which I have Verizon, and out of Canaveral, Verizon's good for about 20 miles or so.
Wow. Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they've got some towers out at the Space Center. So we have a little bit different scenario than some other places have. I wouldn't recommend running my boat 30 miles out of Cedar Key, where you may not see another boat for 3 or 4 or 5 days.
Right.
But where I run out of and the distances that I'm comfortable with. 20 all day long, 30 is kind of a little bit more of a stretch, but I make sure that I have those extra things with me in case something were to happen.
Yeah, I do too, Jimmy, and I've got a satellite phone and such. But my big deal was always when I was single powered, one of my best friends, Captain George Strait, who you've heard me mention 1,000 times, was always on the party boat. He ran every day, and I never went where he couldn't hear me. Okay, because I knew as long as George could still hear me, I was coming home. So I'm not sure enough people pay enough attention to their VHF radios, but they need good ones, and they need to stay within the range of where they can be heard. Jimmy, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'm looking forward to it, Rick.
Thanks so much, Captain Jim Ross. Hey, it's finally fall, and how many of us have been waiting for the magic of the mullet run to start? There are literally miles of mullet moving along just about every area of Florida coastline. What you need to cash in on the tarpon, snook, reds, trout, sharks, etc. that are feeding on the poor fingerlings is the perfect mullet imitation. Well, for my money, you can skip all the high-dollar made-in-China mullet imitators. For me and all the podcasters I've talked with, the perfect mullet imitation is made right here in Stuart, Florida, and it's the D.O.A. Bait Buster. Mark Nichols, the owner and manufacturer of D.O.A., spent years designing different bait busters to swim shallow, medium, or deep. What makes the bait buster so special? I'll tell you what I think. I think it's the tail. If your bait buster is moving, the tail is flapping. No predator can stand that tail flapping in his face. The D.O.A. Bait Buster. It's the perfect mullet run bait. Our thanks to Jim Ross for a great East Central report. Now, let's check in my favorite little fishing village, Stuart, Florida, with one John Earhart. Captain John, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here, Rick.
Mighty glad to have you, son. Tell me about your fishing. Did this warm-up slow your sail fishing down?
It seems like the sail fishing has been a little slower this season. We just had the Jupiter Billfish tournament. They did catch plenty of sails, but to me it seemed like it was a little slower than what I'd expect for this time of year. I think it was a 3-day tournament, and they released 61 sailfish over the course of 3 days of fishing. I believe the catch 23, Michael Jordan's Viking, he won the tournament, and I think they caught I want to say 16 or 17 sailfish to win the tournament. Most of these guys were live bait fishing with goggle eyes. I believe 48 out of the 61 or 62 sailfish were caught while they were live baiting, and the other 12 or 13 were caught dead bait fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely seemed like the live bait was definitely doing the trick during this tournament.
All right, what's going on besides sailfish?
Right now we're getting a lot of nice blackfin tuna, and that's been anywhere from 90 feet out to 350 feet. Some of them have been pretty good size, 15, 20 pounders. So they're not the little small football sized tunas. There's some really nice chunky blackfin tunas out there right now, and there's been a few nice wahoo mixed in during the Jupiter billfish tournament. I think the heaviest meat fish was a 42-pound wahoo they caught. And I think that was in about 160 feet of water.
Yeah, that's a good fish. I saw you with a beautiful catch, looked like from today, of lane snapper and sheep's head. You must have been pretty close to shore.
Yeah, we were actually fishing inside the Indian River today. It seems like we got the sheep's head spawn going on right now, so it's pretty easy to go out there and catch a limited sheep's head. There's been some lane snappers and mangrove snappers in the river. The pompano have been kind of traveling in and out of the inlets lately. So one day you go in the river and you're skipping these fish along these sandy flats, and they're relatively easy to catch. The next day, for whatever reason, they're pushing out the inlet and down along the beaches. So definitely a good time to be pompano fishing both in the river and along the beaches. And if you're river fishing, the sheep's head, black drum, snapper bite's been pretty darn good. And we're get ready for the snook season opener February 1st. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Hopefully the water will warm up a little bit.
Gotcha. Hey, John, if you, now I know that time to time you take off and go sail fishing on your little chaos, but on a regular basis, if you had a 23-foot center console with a single outboard on it, what would you consider your safe range? Where would you go?
I mean, a lot of that depends on how well I maintain my equipment. But I would say, this day and age, like with the technology we have, I wouldn't be afraid to go 20 or 30 miles out.
Right.
But I certainly would want to make sure that my boat was in tip-top shape if I was going to go that far. For us in Stuart, I mean, we don't really need to go that far. So to me, I don't really ever see me going further than 10 or 15 miles. And I feel pretty safe doing that in a 23 to 25-foot boat any time of year, as long as it's not 5-foot seas when I get to the inlet.
Sure. Yeah, your inlet can be nasty in that situation. But, John, my rule up here, now keep in mind we've got a lot further to go. We've got 70 miles to run to get to the ledge. But my rule up here when I had a single-engine 24-foot boat was we have party boats that fish out of here every day, and they will fish up to about 25 miles offshore. I would never be out of the range of their radio. I don't think enough people take into consideration how far can I be easily heard. Because if I break down, and I'm probably pretty sensitive to that, because in 1975, I spent a day and a half waiting to get rescued. And if I had a single engine, I would never be anywhere where a trusted friend with a really big boat, like a party boat, couldn't hear me and take control of the situation. Does that make sense?
I agree with you completely, Rick. And believe it or not, like a stupid little item that I always bring with me in the event of emergency is a mirror.
Oh yeah.
Because if you see a boat way off in the distance, you can shine that mirror, and a lot of times they'll come over to investigate. And that could be a life-saving device that you never thought would save your life. But if I'm going to go that far out all the time, I strongly suggest having a satellite phone that you can call anytime, anywhere, any place. That's what I would have if I was an owner of a single outboard motorboat, and I'm going to take the risk of going a little further out, a little more than I should be.
Yeah,
you don't want to be outside radio distance of other boats that are offshore, but I would have the satellite phone this day and age. It definitely makes sense, and it's not super expensive either.
Well, you can tell that I got scared enough, because I've got a satellite phone and I've got a flare. There's a company here in Jacksonville called Datrex, Datrex, and Datrex makes serious life-saving equipment. And let me tell you something. I've got a flare that, John, if I set it off Mayport, you're going to see me. You're
so
going to.
I could see that Datrex flare down in Stuart if you send it up.
Yes, sir. I bet you can. I mean, it's a serious sign that somebody's in trouble. As always, Cap, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir. I'll check in with you next week.
All right, Captain John Earhart from Stuart, Florida. We're going to swing a little bit further south to check in with somebody who knows all about what a boat can handle, Captain Ray Rocher. Now, let's check in with the Dean of Miami Charter Boat Captains, the man himself, Captain Ray Rocher. Cap, how we doing?
I am good. How are you doing?
Doing outstanding. I want to hear about Miami's fishing this week.
Well, it was a good week. It wasn't quite as good as the Keys. One of my buddies caught the 32 and the 23 in back-to-back days in Marathon.
Wow.
Kind of, around Tennessee to Alligator. They were fishing that Florida Cup, and he called me the evening before, and, you get, I think you get 5 days in a year, 4 or 5 days, and you can throw in one mulligan day if you pay for it. So, it's just, it goes on till I want to say June 1st. So, the big challenge is, do you use tomorrow? You got to declare it by 11 p.m. And, it's a risk, right? The water could turn green, the current could stop, whatever. But he said, looks like conditions are making up. Not sure if the wind's going to be right, but it's close. And he went for it, and they caught 32, and then the next day went out and caught 23. So that was the absolute highlight in the South End this week. In Miami, during the same time, we were getting, somewhere between 5 and 10 bites a day, and great charter fishing. We did have, strong current all the way in on the reef. Today was the first day I saw the current backing off, and the sail fishing definitely slowed down. So, I think we had that little push of great conditions, and I think maybe the most I heard of all week was like 12 or 13 in a day here. But it was great fishing. Some dolphin, 2 kings. Today, when that current slowed down, I went bottom fishing, and I caught some vermilions and Amico and fought a big shark. And one of our other boats bottom fished for a 3/4 day, and he had a genuine red snapper over 20 pounds and 3 nice sized black grouper. Of course, all those had to go back. And then they caught a couple nice muttons up to about 12, 14 pounds, and some other odds and ends, jacks and vermilions and so on. So the bottom fishing, kind of goes that way. When the current slows down, we go dropping. When that current's ripping, we put up the kites.
Are you using those descending devices?
Yeah.
Ready to send those big snapper back down? I know the big blacks are bad about that too. Which one do you use?
Sequelizer works really well.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. And they get off of it okay, right?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, okay. One of our old crewmen, Jeffrey Lederman, and his friend Patrick Brown built them here, and they built a great product, and they're now mandatory on a charter boat. So
right, they're mandatory on private boats too.
Really, I didn't know. Yeah. I just knew what I needed to have. So
yeah, sequelizers.
We just went through it. Yep, and I think they're the best. You can regulate the pressure on them. So, in other words, if you're fishing 60 feet of water, and you want to set it for 40 feet to get the fish. If you're fishing in 60 feet of water and you want to set the release mechanism for 40 feet, you can do it, or vice versa. You're in 300 feet and you want them to go down 200. You can just dial it up, and then the pressure triggers the jaw to release it. So it's really well made, and they're not prone to corrosion. I've had them on our boats for years, and a little freshwater rinse, and you're good to go.
Good deal. That's outstanding news. Ray, as always, we appreciate the heck out of it, and I sure hope we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Captain Ray Rocher.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. What? Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species, from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Ray Rocher for a great report. My goodness, how about those 2 days worth of sailfish down I guess it was near Marathon, 32 and 23. That's 2 back-to-back pretty good days, isn't it, Brandon?
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of laundry hanging around Bud & Mary's Marina.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me. What are they catching?
Lots of sailfish. It seems like that a lot of boats were having 10 shots per boat, which is fantastic to see. A lot of tailing fish, sight casting. Also, there's been some wahoo in that current edge as well, along with some blackfin tunas. We also had a day where a lot of African pompanos were biting. which was nice to see. I actually went out and had some fun with that as well. I went and caught 3 full-grown African pompanos, which was a lot of fun.
Woo.
And, oh, yeah. And as far as backcountry goes, there's been plenty of good snook around. Most recent charter, day before yesterday, we landed a 38-inch snook that was very girthy. That's a good 40 snook. Also, there's been some tarpon around with the temperature, the way it's getting. Of course, there's been kind of fronts coming in here and there. So this is around the first day of the cold front. They're not so happy, but once the water warms back up after that cold front, you can get a shot at a couple of nice tarpon. Spanish mackerel has been jumping in the boat back there. That's been red hot. And been lots of variety on the patches still with, those wintertime temperatures.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Beaner. You've got a single-engine Seacraft you're running, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, 23, I believe?
It's a 20, but they build off the back transom and added brackets, so it's like 22-ish now.
Okay. All right. What would you consider, with your single engine and your 22-foot boat, your outside range?
Oh, you know what? It just kind of depends on actually how close I am to land. If I'm going 35 miles way back.
Yeah, you're in a unique area. Right. I'm talking about straight offshore.
I'd say the humps. I've been to the humps a few times in that, but it's like, you pick your days, right?
Right,
Black
sure.
Hog. And another thing is there's always, when you're offshore and you're going to the humps, there's always boats around, going from point A to point B. So in case of emergency, I mean, you never want that day to come, but in case of emergency, if you take the right precautions, you have the right safety equipment on your boat, there's someone that's not too far away that will pick you up on a radio, of course. But yeah, I would say in a 20-foot Seacraft with a single engine, the humps is my range.
Gotcha. And that's about how far from you?
Well, we have multiple humps. I think the closest one to me is about 15 miles, 14 miles from our head pins.
I see. So you'd be okay in the 15 to say 25 mile range?
Right. Yeah, that's the 14 mile away hump is the Islamorada hump, and then the 409 hump, the little hump, 18 miles away, which which I've been to. But yeah, that's pretty much as far as I want to go in a boat like that.
Gotcha. Cap, that's a great report. We appreciate your thoughts very much, and please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks to Brandon Storn for a great Islamorada report. Man, they're stacking the sailfish down there. Now let's head over to the West Coast, check in with 10,000 Islands with Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
Oh, fantastic, Rick. How are you today?
Doing good, man. Doing good. The weather's warm and calm, and it's almost 80 degrees up here.
It is. We're having record heat down here. It's crazy. It's unbelievable for January.
It's a strange year. There's no other way to get around it. It's a strange year.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm still trying to draw the mental picture in my mind of leaving the water running on my cleaning table and having a solid icicle from where the cleaning table is down to the dock. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Tell me about your fishing.
Well, we're kind of touching on it, these big swings and, the volatile weather, as nice as it is right now, it seems like across the entire state, don't get too comfortable, I always say, in the month of January and parts of February, because at a snap of a finger, it changes. And this is what we deal with, as, 2 months of the year, we're really susceptible to these cold fronts, and that generally brings wind and all these other things. But there's silver linings. We get these. I call it Chamber of Commerce weather. It's the reason people live here, and we've got this great stretch of warm weather, and that's kind of just going to lead right into we in our region up to, the first part of the weekend, and so we're looking forward to that, to have some nice stable weather for a chance. And really what that's done is it's kind of gotten, warmed up the water quite a bit, especially in the backcountry with our darker tannic water, it retains heat really well. And you get in the wintertime, if you get a run like this, boy, that really energizes some fish, gets your metabolism going. In particular, our snook and redfish. And, those, particularly the snook, we tend to struggle with those. We can get those on nearshore wrecks and reefs, nearshore wrecks and reefs, but the reality is people like to fish inshore, and that's a challenge sometimes in winter to find snook. And you get a stretch like this, they are active, and that's been proven itself, progressively as it's getting warmer and warmer and more stable. So if you, yearn to find some snook here in the heart of winter, now's the time to, take advantage of that. The redfish will be right there along with them. They're not going to be giants, but there is action, and which is a lot of fun because it's not something we, typically do. You can get your backcountry slam very easily right now, with these warming trends. So redfish, snook, and trout all in play on the inshore side.
Yeah, they don't get many little windows like this in Minnesota. I can handle the Florida cold as long as every now and then God says, all right, guys, take a break for a couple days. Here's a little 70 degrees. Here's a pile of fish. And then I'm going to bring another cold front, and that's fine. We get along fine that way. But that's an outstanding report. I hope it holds. Any word on when the next cold front's coming?
Yeah, we're supposed to get something, latter part of the weekend into early next week. So we'll see. It doesn't look like it's going to sustain itself. It's just those kind of one-dayers. So obviously, you got stable weather leading up to a front. You want to fish on the front side of that front, maybe take the day off of the front. The day after is always challenging because you generally have the winds. And then it should settle right back into it. So I know a lot of people can't pick and choose what days they go fishing, but boy, if you want to burn a vacation day, try to get on the front side of those fronts.
You know what I like about February?
Yes, sir.
It ain't spring, but I can see it from here.
Yeah.
I survived December and January. I can see it from here now. Cap, as always, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Oh, can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Steve. Captain Steve Dolan, 10,000 Islands. I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing legend, you sure looked the part. Oh, man, if a bunch of us old guys paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the options of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because for each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company is going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be raced in your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCo.com and get your best sun protection today. The Castaway Hat Company. They've got a hat for every adventure. Now it's time to move up the coast a little bit into Southwest Florida and check in with one Captain Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters. How we doing, Snooky?
I'm doing very, very well, Rick. How are you today?
Good. Boy, you scared me when your dog got sick last week. I can't handle that.
Yeah, it was a tough day and a half, but we're all good now, and I've been out a few times this week fishing, and I think I got blessed on the Lord because I had 1 or 2 days where I could do no wrong.
How about that? Tell me about your fishing.
So, when it gets cold and it gets all mucked up and the water's all crazy and it's super low tide, one of my go-tos is, can I get to those deep holes along the mangroves? And it was cold. It was windy, and it's one of those days where I didn't know what would happen. And I was able to crawl into 1 or 2 areas barely and get to those deep holes. And we caught some backcountry slams on 2 straight days doing exactly that. So we're talking about snook, we're talking about redfish,
trout were not a problem at all, and the water was like mud. It was like a yoo-hoo. Everywhere we went, yoo-hoo water. And we did very, very well.
I'll be darned. Well, that's crazy they'd be in that colored water, but I guess they got to be there, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And, we didn't have anything other than shrimp. And I used pieces of shrimp on jigs, really tight to these mangroves. We're not talking about deep holes. We're talking about areas that go from 1 foot to about 3 or 4 foot along shoreline. And we just weighed them out. And the trout we free-line shrimp, that was not a problem. We caught plenty of those. But we started picking up small redfish, which in my world, we didn't see any small reds last year. So catching 18, 19, 20-inch reds is a real positive. But you know what's crazy? When the water's that cold, it's all mucked up, and you start blowing up snook, that's like, okay, we're going to have a good day.
Nothing wrong with that. That's crazy. I'm glad to hear it's gone that way for you. Now, this cold front that's coming toward the end of this week, are your temperatures currently above normal for this time of year, or are they about normal?
They're pretty normal water-wise. We had some really, really cold water, and now we're in the, I don't know, it's probably today 84, 85 degrees. So the warm-up is continuing, and then we'll have another drop. Very typical of this time of year. We get these fronts that sometimes stall out, kind of near where Ray's at. We get the stalling fronts. Those are really good for us. The ones that actually the tails that sweeps down, comes down from that northwest and just pushes through us. That hurts us for a few days, and we get the wind. But overall, Rick, it's been pretty good. I mean, a backcountry slam, doing it 2 or 3 times over 2 days, that's a good thing for me. Now, I will tell you one thing that's going to start up here very shortly. On this full moon, the guys are going to start going out offshore when they get to decent nights and the wind is calm, and they're going to do nighttime snapper fishing.
Oh, yeah.
This is a big, big deal in our neck of the woods. So if you have the boat to do it, let's just start there, because you got to go 30, 40 miles out to some of these ledges. That's about 110 feet, give or take, in my neck of the woods. But if you can get out there and you can chum them up, get out there as the sun's going down, get anchored up current from these ledges, you're going to find now, and we'll talk about this a lot more over the next month and a half, you can get into snappers, mangoes mainly, other lanes, and a few others. But we're talking about fish that are 5 to 7, 8 pounds on the regular.
That's big old strong mangroves there. Those things are a lot of fun. And I don't know how your guys do it, Greg. I was always the most successful with free lining, just a chunk of a pogie, just free lining something to where there was no resistance at all. They're pretty smart animals. And if for us, that was a way to pick them off, get them chummed up just a little bit and then drop back some baits with no weight, and they'd pile all over it.
No, you and me in the same ballpark. But here, you get out there about when the sun's going down. You chum for, let's say, an hour. You do not put a line in the water, Rick. You get those fish to start rising. They'll come back into that chum slip. They get comfortable. You're putting little chunks of sardines, redfins, pilchards, shrimp in that chum slick. And when they rise up, you free line those same chunks right back to them, and you can whack them.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Greg, as always, we appreciate the heck out of it. Good to hear you doing so well with your fishing, and please tell me we can check with you next week.
You can, Rick. I got about 2 weeks, and I might have my own boat, and life's going to be good.
I like the sound of that. All right, we'll talk soon, Cap. Now let's move into West Central and see what Cap Markham's up to. How we doing, Raymond?
Fantastic.
Good. Any fish has been caught down there lately?
Well, you know what? The wind machine finally quit, at least for a couple days.
Yeah.
And, we had winds probably over 20, 25 miles an hour for about, 4 days in a row. And finally things just kind of calmed down. But I just got off the phone with some guys that are fishing out of St. Pete, went out and totally wrecked the group. 6 guys on board. They had limits each, and the average weight was over 15 pounds.
Wow. Aren't they closed now?
Red grouper?
Oh, not red.
No.
Okay, red.
Gad.
I got you.
Gad.
Gad.
The wrong side of the state.
Okay. All right. Well, how about that?
Yeah.
I didn't know they were open now. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's really good.
Man, oh man.
And the average was 15 pounds? That's good fish, Cap.
I think it was over 15 pounds.
Wow.
But, I put one picture in coming up for this weekend's fishing forecast you can take a gander at. I don't want to put the whole mess in. It's like I'd need a wider angle lens.
Well, how about that? What's going on inshore?
Oh, inshore, we got a bunch of trout that are starting to show up, and average fish is at least in the legal slot, with a bunch of them that are actually out of the slot. So that's all really good news. Guys down out of Sarasota are catching a few pompano. They're catching some redfish on the long bar down there middle of Sarasota Bay. I talked to a few guys up around Terracea. They're doing pretty well with snook and redfish there. Some snook kind of poked out of the canals and the river here in the last couple of days, and guys caught a few of them. Most of them are using live shrimp. But I happen to know that if I chuck one of those fake plastic ones at them, they probably do the same thing.
Yes, sir. You are an artificial fisherman at heart. There's no question about that. Wow, now, Ray, will your snook stay active if it gets cold again? I mean, it's supposed to get cold again this weekend. Are they active, or do they get a little quiet as we get cooler?
Well, they do get a little bit quiet, but they don't go far at this point from where their cold spots are. When they want to get back to where it's warm, they're going to get back to the deep, dark water, and they're going to hang there. A lot of these fish are in residential canals that were dug out, and they have pretty good depth. Most of them are lined with cement seawalls. So if you're fishing them in the morning, obviously you're releasing them. But if you're fishing them in the morning, you want to fish on the south side. The west side of the canal, if it's a north-south running canal.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when sun comes up, it heats up that seawall first, and those fish tend to gravitate to it. And literally, those fish are leaning right up against that cement. That cement heats up all the way down into the water, and those fish are liking it. So the only ones that are eating. Yeah.
You know where my favorite place to catch mullet for bait is in the wintertime, don't you?
Publix? I don't know.
No. I'm talking about live baits. On top of
really?
Yeah, on top of boat ramps. Go to a boat ramp that doesn't have a ton of traffic, buddy. They'll be laying on that warm concrete like crazy.
Well, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I've said this for a gazillion years. And I think one April 1st action spotter or something that I did, maybe it was weekend fishing forecast I did, was talking about the most overlooked fishing hole everywhere. And it's the boat ramp. Because all these guys that fish live bait, they come back, they empty their live well when they have leftovers, and usually there's plenty of it with the size of some of these wells that they got going anymore. They're more like a jacuzzi. And, they're powering their boats out of the ramp. So they're automatically digging deep holes right at the base of the ramp and all around it. Mm-hmm. So those fish will hang right there. And I hope nobody's listening to this, so you don't go out and do that.
Gee, thanks, Ray. No, it's true. And I got news for you. Those baits that have been in the well all day, when they let them go, they're pretty easy for the predators to catch, too. They're first off,
buddy. And not only that, the FWC guy who's taking records of how many fish you caught and all that kind of stuff, he's standing right there so he can write them all down.
Right. And they've usually changed color. If you got a white well, they're bright colored, and no, those baits that get thrown back out of live wells are valuable. Cap, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check for you next week.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Raymond. Cap Ray Markham from West Central. Academy Sports and Outdoors' mission is to provide fun for the whole family by carrying all the best gear from top brands including Columbia, Yeti, Costa, Penn, Shimano, and so many more at prices that you're going to love. Whether you're planning on spending the day at the beach, hosting the friends in the backyard, reeling in a big fish, or gearing up for the game, Academy has a wide assortment of sports and outdoor products that will guarantee you that you're going to have fun out there. Hey, Academy has just opened their new store in Panama City, and look out, Tampa, here they come. You're next on the list. It's a dynamic and fun shopping experience while also offering convenient options such as buy online, pick up in store, and free shipping on most online orders over $25. When shopping at Academy, customers are going to be able to take advantage of some great in-store services. How about they'll assemble your grill for you or your bike? How about scope mounting, bore sighting, line winding and spooling, propane exchanges? They've got the pros to get it done, and the ability to purchase hunting and fishing licenses. With Academy's best price guarantee, if you find a better advertised price anywhere, not only will Academy match it, but they'll beat it by 5%. Until the new store in Tampa opens, you can shop online at academy.com or through Academy's mobile app. You can sign up for email alerts, receive digital ads, offers, and exchange with Academy's social media accounts. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. We're going to head up into Northwest Florida, and that's where K2 Sport Fishing and Captain Kevin Lanier are located. Kev, how we doing?
Hey, Captain Rick, we're doing great today. How about yourself?
Outstanding, my boy. Any fish get caught this week?
There's been fish caught up here. You know, the inshore fishing's still pretty good. The bigger reds are here, just like we were reported last week, and there have been a few guys getting offshore. Of course, there's hundreds of red snapper to throw back.
Of course.
But they're getting vermilions and black snapper, a number of other fish too as well, and still some pompano. Pompano are showing up here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is it generally, isn't it a little later in the spring when you get them?
Yes, generally it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So no.
So that's an early arrival this year.
Yeah, well, some of them get lost every now and then.
Yep. And end up in your cooler. I understand.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So other than red snapper, grouper fishing any good?
No, nobody's really going for them because everything but reds is closed.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not worth getting out there and having to release so many red snapper to try to catch a few red grouper.
Kevin, I don't like eating red grouper nearly as much as I do gags or scamps. Do you agree?
I agree with you personally, yes.
Okay. I just wondered. Let me ask you a question. You've got a big twin-engine offshore boat. If you were running a 23-foot single-engine boat out of Mexico Beach, what would you consider to be your range?
20 miles.
20 miles? Okay.
That's it.
That's almost been a consensus. 20 to 30 miles has been pretty much a consensus. I always held out for I would not go any further than I could be heard on my VHF from much closer to shore. So, yeah, I think that's probably safe. Man, I got to tell you, I am seeing 23-foot, 22-foot bay boats, 70 miles offshore all the time, and it scares the heck out of me.
Fine line between brave and stupid.
Yeah, I think there is, Cap. I sure do. Well, listen, we sure appreciate the report. Sounds like things are good out of Mexico Beach. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
We'll be back with bells on.
All right, Captain Kevin Lanier out of Mexico Beach. Now, we can't leave Florida without going out the border. That's right around where Captain Tyler Massey is, the Florida-Alabama border. How we doing, Cap?
We're doing good, Rick. How are you guys?
Doing excellent, buddy. Tell me about your fishing.
Yeah, fishing's still been pretty good for us. You know, we've had, weather's been a little more mild. You know, we're warming back up. Not saying it's going to last very long, but for right now, that's what we got. Inshore, which is what most of the guys have been focusing on. We're still fishing structure for those redfish, sheep's heads, black drum. The bridges in the bay are holding. Sheephead fishing's been pretty good. Fishing real close to the pilings using filler crabs or live shrimp on like a Carolina rig or just like a knocker rig where the weight sits right up against the hook, real close to the structure. That's going to be key. Trying to get these fish to bite right now. So you can expect, like I said, sheephead, black drum, redfish, all fishing right there. Catching some redfish also on that wreck that I talked about before. It's out in the Gulf. It's called the Massachusetts wreck.
Right.
This has been it's an old battleship, but this is not normal for us, and it's not something that I've experienced in the last 12 years or so of guiding, where the redfish are hanging out on this wreck. And 25 foot of water, we fish there a lot, catch a lot of bait fish and king mackerels and stuff throughout the year, but the redfish have just been stacked up on this thing, and it's still been pretty hot. So
are they oversized? Are they all the big bulls, or are there slot fish there?
It's mixed. It's mixed slots and oversized, so it's been very productive.
That's interesting. Now, you've got a big wreck over there named the Oriskany, don't you?
Yes, we do, and that's an aircraft carrier. It was the largest artificial reef in the country. I'm not sure if it still is or not.
Now, how far offshore is it?
That one's close to 30 miles, like 28 miles or so offshore out of Pensacola.
I'm going to guess there's an amberjack that lives there.
Yeah, there's a couple vermilion snappers, a couple amberjack.
Yeah, I would
a lot of diver action there, though, so we don't fish all there too much. A lot of divers go there.
Yeah, that is pretty cool with them being on that wreck closer to shore, though, the big redfish. That's outstanding.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah, no trolling yet, huh?
No, we haven't been doing too much of just the bottom fishing. We're catching a few vermilion snappers. There's a lot of stuff biting. The amberjacks, those red snappers, they're biting. You got to turn them loose. But it's good fishing on almost all the wrecks. If you get a nice enough day, it's fun to go catch that kind of stuff. You can catch the amberjacks on like diamond jigs and vertical jigs and that kind of stuff, which throughout the rest of the year, a lot of times they don't eat that kind of stuff here. I think the pressure gets to them, but it's fun. You can go fish artificials and catch some nice fish and catch some vermilion snappers to eat. Still can be a very productive day out in the Gulf.
Gotcha. Good deal. Cap, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here, Rick. We'll see you guys.
You got it. Captain Tyler Massey wraps up our trip around the state tonight. And, boy, there was a lot of good fishing going on. We've had a break in the weather for the whole week, and that's how we know God loves us. We have wintertime like everybody else, but every now and then he slides a few nice, warm, calm days in there and lets us all be happy. Sailfish bite really surprised me in the Keys. That was probably the biggest news. Gosh, that one boat combined for almost 60 fish in 2 days. That's incredible. Sailfish bite, where it traditionally is this time of year, around the Stuart, Palm Beach area, has been a little bit off. Good news on snapper all around. The lane snapper biting very well. The mangrove snapper biting very well. And we're starting to see a return to grouper. I know I've seen it up here off of Jacksonville. My goodness, we had 5 red grouper on the boat the other day, which shocked me. I was only about 12 miles off the beach. So there's been bottom fishing almost seems to be getting better. The sea bass fishing's been good. Captain David Borges says it's all about the weather. When it's good, the fishing's good. When it gets cold, they get very, very difficult to get to bite. Remember what he told us a couple of weeks ago? I found that so interesting. When he was raising koi for a living, those grass carp, Asian carp or whatever, in the summertime he had to feed them twice a day. In the wintertime, once a week. That tells you what happens to fish's metabolism when it gets cold. Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. It's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, you want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By Castaway Hat Company, the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors, right stuff, low price, every day. Well, here's to more warm weather. It's going to be coming before you know it. But until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the rip.